It was late, close to 11, when the quiet in my row house felt heavier than usual. My dog, Coda, was sprawled across the rug, half asleep. The TV flickered, casting odd shadows on the walls. The sound of a car engine idling outside broke the monotony. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe a neighbor coming home late, or someone dropping off a package. Coda, though, lifted his head and trotted over to the front window, his claws ticking against the floorboards. He nosed the blinds aside, leaving them bent at odd angles. I got up to fix them, mostly out of habit, and peered out. Across the street, I could just make out a car parked under the weak glow of a street lamp. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat, but the details were swallowed by the dark. I shrugged it off. Maybe they were just waiting for someone. I poured myself a glass of water, settled back onto the couch, and tried to lose myself in the show again. Coda came back, circled the rug, and flopped down with a sigh. It must have been 15, maybe 20 minutes later when I heard the faintest tapping. Not a knock, more like someone gently testing the surface of my front door, barely making a sound. Coda's ears perked up. I muted the TV and the tapping stopped. Then, it started up again, this time against the living room window. I crept to the window, heart thumping, and nudged the blinds aside just enough to see. A man was standing there, maybe late 30s, face obscured by the angle in the shadows. As soon as my eyes met his, he moved away from the glass and back toward the door. He started tapping at the door again, soft, rhythmic, almost polite, but something about it made my skin crawl. Coda was up now, standing between me and the door, hackles raised. I couldn't explain it, but every instinct screamed at me not to open up. I backed away, keeping my eyes on the door, and hurried up the stairs, Coda close behind. From the landing window, I could see the man's outline through the frosted glass below. I opened the upstairs window just a crack, my voice shaking as I called down to him.
I'm delivering pizza. You owe $12.50. Come down and get it before it's cold.
I felt ridiculous for being so scared. My voice came out too loud, echoing off the empty street. I didn't order any pizza. I tried to sound firm, but my hands were shaking. Maybe he was just being quiet so he wouldn't wake the neighbors. Coda's growl rumbled low in his chest.
This is the right address. Come downstairs. I'm not leaving until you pay for your food.
Coda barked, sharp and anxious. I tried to hush him, but he just pressed closer to me, never taking his eyes off the stairs. The man below started repeating himself, his voice shifting from almost friendly to something sharper, then back again. I squinted, searching for any sign of a pizza box, but his hands were empty. Nothing. I asked him again where the pizza was. He insisted he was holding it, but there was nothing there. Just his silhouette on the porch, shifting from foot to foot.
Come downstairs, open the door. Come downstairs and open the door.
Suddenly, my neighbor's porch light flicked on. Their front door opened with a creak. The man on my porch froze, then bolted across the street without a word. I watched as he slipped into the car I'd seen earlier, still empty-handed, and the engine roared to life. The car peeled away, taillights vanishing into the dark. I stood there, still half hidden behind the curtain, heart pounding, Coda pressed against my leg. My neighbor lingered on their porch, looking over at my house, but I couldn't bring myself to move. I never did find out who that man was, or what he wanted. The police said it was probably just a mix-up, but I know what I saw. He never had a pizza. He saw Coda, big, loud, impossible to miss, and still, he tried to get me to open the door. Even now, every time a car slows down outside at night, I feel that same cold knot in my stomach. I keep the blinds closed tighter. Coda sleeps closer to the door. And sometimes, when the house settles and the floor creaks, I catch myself listening for that quiet, insistent tapping, hoping I never hear it again.
The afternoon sun was starting to dip, spreading long shadows over the dirt road that runs past my place. Out here, in the open country, you can hear the wind coming before you feel it. My nearest neighbor lives over a mile away, and most days, it's just me and my dog, Nico, watching the world drift by. Nico sprawled at my feet, his ears twitching at every squirrel that dared cross the road. The air was thick with the scent of cut grass and dust, and the only sounds were the distant calls of crows and the lazy rattle of cicadas. It was mid-afternoon when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I looked up to see an old sedan slowing to a stop by the edge of my yard, just beyond the fence line. The driver's window rolled down, and a man leaned out, calling over the distance. He asked if he could come up to the porch for a minute. I hesitated, then waved him in, more out of habit than comfort. Nico, who'd been half asleep, shot up and planted himself between me and the steps. His fur bristled and a low, steady rumble started in his chest. I'd never heard him sound like that before. The man stepped out of his car, moving slow, hands in his pockets. He looked like he was in his 40s, maybe older, with a patchy beard and a faded ball cap. As he got closer, Nico's growl deepened, and the hair along his back stood up straight.
"He gonna bite?"
I told him, "He's meaner than hell." That wasn't true. Nico's never bitten anyone. But I figured this guy didn't need to know that. The man stopped short, staying a good distance from the steps. He kept glancing at Nico, shifting his weight from foot to foot.
"Name's Joel. I'm Mavis's boy, from down the road. Moved back in to help her out."
We made small talk for a bit. He asked about the weather, mentioned his mother's health, said he'd grown up around here but hadn't been back in years. I tried to keep it polite, but Nico wouldn't budge from his spot. He just stared at the man, eyes locked and tail stiff. After a couple minutes, Nico stopped growling, but the ridge of fur along his spine never settled. His breathing was quick and shallow. I could feel my own nerves tightening, my hands curling into fists in my lap. I told the man I needed to get back inside, that my wife was waiting on me. He nodded, mumbled something about seeing me around, and walked back to his car. I watched him the whole way. The sedan rattled down the road, kicking up a cloud of dust behind it. I waited until the car was out of sight before I let myself exhale. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table, the laptop humming beneath my fingertips. I typed the name he'd given me into the search bar, heart thudding in my ears. Didn't take long. The first result was a mugshot, registered sex offender. The screen seemed to flicker, the room suddenly colder than before. A shiver ran through me. My mind started racing. My wife, my daughter, both home most days. I looked over at Nico, who was curled up by the back door now, still alert, ears perked. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for Mavis, the man's mother. My voice shook as I told her what happened and asked her to make sure he stayed away from my place. After I hung up, I sat there in the quiet, every tick of the clock loud as thunder. Nico padded over and pressed his head against my knee. I scratched behind his ears, feeling the tension start to drain away. I'd always heard folks say a dog can sense the bad in someone. I believe it now. Out here, sometimes your only warning is the way the hair stands up on a dog's back and the silence that follows.
The bus hissed away, leaving me alone on the curb. The streetlights flickered and the night air felt heavier than usual. I was 16, maybe 17, and this was just another Thursday night. At least that's what I told myself. It was only 11, but the neighborhood felt deserted. I knew these streets by heart. Row houses, trimmed hedges, the same cracked pavement. I'd walked home alone 100 times. Tonight, though, the quiet pressed in differently. Halfway down the block, I spotted someone, just a silhouette, a man, maybe early 20s, walking away from me. My stomach tensed, but I tried to keep my pace steady. He didn't look back at first. I told myself it was nothing. A few steps later, he turned, just a quick glance over his shoulder like he'd heard something. I do that too, I thought. It's normal. But he did it again, and again. Each time his head snapped back a little sharper, like he was making sure I was still there. I tried to convince myself he was just nervous too, maybe not used to empty streets. But I started counting my steps. I could hear the tap of my own shoes, nothing else. The houses on either side felt like they were holding their breath. Then, suddenly, he veered off the sidewalk and down the path to one of the houses. He disappeared into the little alcove where the front door sat, tucked away behind a brick wall. Relief washed over me. He lived there. I was just being jumpy. But I stopped. Something felt wrong. I couldn't explain it, but the relief faded too fast. My feet rooted to the pavement, and I just stared at that dark doorway, heart thumping. I couldn't shake the sense that I was being watched, still. On impulse, I stepped off the sidewalk and crouched behind a parked car. I felt ridiculous, but my skin prickled with dread. I pressed myself low, barely breathing, eyes locked on the house's entrance. The street was silent, so silent I could hear my own heartbeat. I waited. Seconds stretched out, thick and sticky. I kept telling myself I was being silly, that I should just get up and go home. But I couldn't move. I watched the darkness by the door, every muscle tense. Then, movement. He stepped back out onto the path, glancing up and down the street. He wasn't fumbling for keys, wasn't carrying groceries. He looked frustrated, almost, like he was searching for something or someone. It hit me then. He'd never gone inside. He'd been waiting, tucked out of sight, hoping I'd walk past. My skin crawled. If I'd kept walking, I would have passed right by him, close enough to touch. My mind blanked. I didn't even think about my phone or calling for help. I just bolted, darted down the nearest cross street, sneakers pounding the pavement. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see if he was following. I took the long way home, weaving through back streets and alleys, heart hammering the whole time. Every shadow looked like him. Every sound made me flinch. I didn't slow down until I saw my own front door. I slammed the door behind me and double-locked it. My hands shook so badly I could barely turn the key. The house was dark and quiet, my family asleep, unaware. I just stood there, back pressed against the wood, catching my breath. I didn't wake anyone. I didn't call the police. I just went to my room, crawled under the covers, and stared at the ceiling. The silence felt different, like the whole house was listening, waiting. In the morning, it almost felt like a dream. I got dressed, grabbed my backpack, and left for school. No one else seemed to notice anything off, but I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see a shadow slip behind a hedge. Looking back, I wonder if I heard something my conscious mind missed, like the absence of a door closing, or the way the night seemed to hold its breath. Maybe my brain pieced it together before I did. I don't know, but I'm glad I listened. Sometimes you just have to trust that feeling, the one that tells you to hide, even when you can't explain why. I still walk those streets, but I never forget how close wrongness can lurk, even in places that feel like home.